Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Joumanna Bercetche. I'm an anchor from Bloomberg Television. I will tell you something. Hopefully you're familiar with our show, our morning show. if you are familiar with this show, you'll notice that we spend a good chunk of my day talking about AI and how it's changing the landscape for investments, but across the board, across so many different industries. So I'm really excited about our panel today. We're talking about AI and new roles for CIOs, and hopefully there are many of you in the room with us. I thought it was interesting before we came here, I don't know if you saw, but outside there was actually a poll taking place, and one of the questions that we were asking is, where do you think the biggest change to the IT agenda is going to come from vis-a-vis AI? And we gave 6 different options: budget, vendor contracts, team size, skills, the delivery model, governance or strategy. And most of you said that the biggest change is going to come to the delivery model and to governance. So these are some of the themes that we're going to go over in our panel today. Let me introduce our panelists. To my right, Wissam Youssef, CEO and co-founder of CME Offshore. And then to his right, Abdullah Mahmood, partner from Deloitte. So really good to have you both with us. Wissam, let me start with you. Look, you know, it's not new that companies have to deploy strategy, but what is new is that AI is becoming a game changer in the space of what you do. How important is it to have a credible and an AI strategy that's also easily implementable these days?
Thank you, Joumanna. Thank you for the audience for being there today, for being here. You know, there are different types of AI and different species of intelligence, let's say. You have the predictive AI, you have the generative AI, which is the one that is most known today. You have the autonomous, you have the perceptive, different types. So we're not dealing with one way of evolution. It's a complete ecosystem. And that actually presents a big load on CIOs to strategize and to plan for the future. Why? Because the goals are always the same, basically. Whether you are in a private business, it's mainly growth and revenue, profitability, efficiency. Public institutions, mainly customer or citizen satisfaction, trust, and quality of service. So these are the main goals, but the tools that we have at hand are changing. So we're dealing with a moving target, in an unknown territory that is driven by AI evolution that is unprecedented. So, and this scenario or this situation, it reminds me of the early explorers. How did they discover the world? They had no maps. They actually drew the maps.
Yeah.
So the way they did it, or their strategy, was to rely on the stars and their intuition.
Yeah.
So hopefully CIOs will not rely on the stars this time. They'll be more focused, I think, on what I refer to as the blindfolded strategy, as if you're navigating a dark room with no tools, with nothing, while not knowing the room itself. So I think the best way to navigate this is through micro-experiments. And by micro-experiments, I don't mean random bets left and right, because this would be a complete waste of money and time. It's more of targeting specific challenges at the enterprise while leveraging AI solutions.
Okay, we'll discuss that throughout our chat. I just want to ask you, to pick up on the explorer analogy. I mean, is AI the actual end goal, or is it the means to an end?
It is definitely a means. And
yeah.
With the emerging of many technologies now, it has always been a better way of helping organizations achieve their objectives and continue their journey towards their digital transformation, which it's not gimmick, it's not something that they're doing it just for the sake of it. They're solving business problems, they're improving quality. And as Wissam said, every organization has its own goals. So everything should be driven by their objectives, regardless of what these objectives are. And that's where the planning comes, that's where the strategy plays a pivotal role in defining what technologies that needs to be implemented, how AI is going to be used to help achieve that objective. And the journey towards that is not simple. It always starts with an exam question. What's the problem that we're trying to solve here? Where do we want to achieve? What do we want to be over the next 3, 4, or 5 years? And then comes, this is the solution, these are the technologies that will help us solve that problem. And with all what comes under that, that keeps us all busy and keeps the CIOs also up all night.
Yeah. Well, the algos stay up all night. We don't need to anymore. Let's talk about some of those AI strategies. So Wissam, is there an opportunity for differentiation on AI strategies? And I know, offline we've spoken about the distinction between the build versus buy dilemma, which is one of the dilemmas that every CIO has to think about. But do you see there being an opportunity for differentiation when it comes to those types of decisions? And also bringing it back to the poll at the beginning, almost no one put vendor contracts as one of the things that they need to think about.
Yeah, so we'll get back to this point maybe later, because maybe we have to adjust the way we define vendor contracting. It's more of engagement models. That's how I see it. It's not the contract itself. So to your question, when it comes to buy versus build and how it impacts the strategy, I would like first to start with the segmentation, a short segmentation of the market. You have the IP-based companies, and it has been always about building because it's their own IP for the reasons you all know. The way or the things that are changing today are how we build and not why we're building. So using AI autonomous agents or AI coding agents, autonomous testing, we're not going to go into the details, but the way we're building is shifting drastically. So that's an important parameter that they need to take into consideration when they consider building a solution. Then you have the second segment, which is non-IP based companies, and here you have two tracks. The first track is the core business, like banking, financial services in general, government entities, where some of them, they have already built their own core systems, right? And some others, they purchased an existing system and they customized it. Why? Because part of our competitive advantage as organizations is actually to implement our workflows and rules as part of the core system. So it's not a black box that we buy, we put it, and then we launch it to the market. We have to own our way to customize the offerings to the customers and to the end users. That's why there is a big need to customize. So that's why I refer to this as build or customization and not a pure buy. So when it comes to this model, there is a hidden force today that's driving CIOs to reconsider the way they deal with legacy systems. I'm sure that many of our audience today, they are used with the word or the quote that we have. If it works, don't touch it. That's when it comes to legacy systems. That's how we perceive legacy systems. So AI is changing that today. We don't have the same fear anymore of touching the legacy systems because AI is capable of understanding COBOL. 800 billion lines of code that run on production system are written by COBOL. 80% of the in-person banking transactions are managed by COBOL. So the legacy systems are there, and you have to find a way to deal with that. Now, the last part is the support functions. So here, we're talking about HR systems, accounting, finance, etc. I would say the straight answer is to buy, because this is something that we need to learn the best practices from the vendors, but maybe we should focus more on identifying AI capabilities. So I'm more lean towards we buy to learn the best practices and support functions. We differentiate in what we buy, and we integrate to evolve. And this is a huge part, I think, in the future.
Abdullah, do you want to weigh in on the build versus buy dilemma?
It's hard to say this is the best strategy, but there are a few principles that you should always keep in your mind when making such decisions, which is the complexity, driven by the complexity that CIOs will be dealing with. Because when you say, I'm going to build something that is there in the market, so that means I'm creating lots of complexities. I'm spending a lot of effort and money on these developments. At the same time, I'm also creating dependency on the teams that have worked on this platform or the solution. So there are risks that come with building. Yes, you're building something that's definitely going to work. Yes, you're building something that is just made for you. But then what about the scalability and the evolution of technologies later on? So that becomes a concern. And when buying, you're always buying it with the services around it, with guaranteed, depending on the platform that you're opting for, there are a set of guarantees that the platform is going to be run. There are warranties, et cetera, et cetera. And when we advise our clients during the platform selection in the market, one of the areas that we assess is actually the after sales, the support, the upgrades, and all the other services that should keep the lights on the platform and ensure the scalability of the platform moving forward with the presence of the emerging technologies and the evolution of technology that we're seeing over
So
time.
bearing in mind the business value, the business opportunity that can still be unlocked, and the reason I'm framing it this way, Jamie Dimon, who you all know, gave an interview to Bloomberg yesterday to one of my colleagues, and he was saying AI cost savings now at JP Morgan are matching the money that was spent. So they obviously spent, I think, $2 billion a year on AI. And he's saying they're getting to the point now where they're sort of breaking even. But should CIOs be focusing more on reducing costs or on boosting operational efficiency and unlocking value?
CIOs should be focusing on implementing all their strategies that are driven by their business. So CIOs' concerns over the years are no more, we need to keep the lights on, we need to offer this to the business, but there are two sides of the IT organizations that the CIO worries about, which is their customers, their business users, and the business of IT itself. And AI plays a pivotal role in both. And it's actually disrupting how they define their strategies and how they run their operations, how they organize how IT organizations are actually orchestrated and organized today. From the business side, always driven by what is the problem statement that we are solving, what's the end stage, what's our strategy, what's the objectives that we're working towards, and that cascades down to the set of projects and objectives that all the IT effort moves towards. But then within the house, within the IT organization, the impact that AI can bring is definitely disrupting organizations. When it comes to the operations itself, when it comes to the provisioning, when it comes to the deployments, there are multiple tools in the markets today that help make the IT operations more efficient when it comes to the testing, the deployment, the threats, the vulnerability assessments, etc., which helps keep the IT teams more focused from setting the policy into executing it, into monitoring it, down to setting the policies and monitoring the compliance. The execution is automated through AI and actually recommendations. And with the emerging of the quantum compute on much more off-scale organizations, that actually plays a pivotal role in cybersecurity, for example, and many other areas, where the effort of IT becomes more focused towards serving the customer, optimizing. So to your point, all of these will definitely help optimize costs, and you can distribute the effort in areas within the IT organization that deliver more impact than just doing work that can be automated through AI.
Yeah. Wissam, Abdullah just mentioned the word, he focused on IT team and the construction of the IT team. Is this also something that CIOs have to think about today in the sense that you spoke about tailor-made, but perhaps more specialization in the space? What does that do to the composition of your IT team?
Well, definitely. I think the AI impact is not only on tools. The biggest impact is on teams.
Yeah.
And the way it's transforming the nature of our workforce, the future workforce. And it's already happening today. So I see there are many two-dimensional shifts in what we have in our workforce today. There is a shift from specialization into generalization when it comes to technology. So it's not anymore about I am a front-end developer or I'm a back-end developer. It's more about I'm an architect. I know how to design a solution, how to scale a solution. And there is another shift, vertical shift, which is from tech-focused or language-focused, syntax-focused into domain expertise. So it's not anymore about I know Python or I know React or I know a specific technology. It's about I know how to solve problems for banking, for insurance, for supply chain. So this is how I see the shift that's happening, and it's going to impact the way we hire. So the workforce is not only shifting or changing in terms of headcount, because we don't need anymore, that's true, I mean, we don't need large teams to develop solutions. You can only have a couple of resources, one of them being an architect, to design and orchestrate. It's like a music band. It's like, I call this model like one-man show. You have a single person who's running the show, and all his job is mainly to compose, orchestrate, and deliver the final result. Now there are challenges, of course, like quality, cybersecurity, and all of these things, intellectual property, but this is how I see the trend moving forward.
Yeah. Do you want to pick up on how you would structure AI projects? Because you've got your team, the team that was just described to us now with the orchestrator, but then how do you ensure that there's an ongoing match between supply and demand?
So that takes us to 2 points: orchestrating the teams and ensuring right governance also around it. And I'm sure we all have seen, and we've all seen the product-based operating model in action. And from that, the AI factory model that came in action, and where you see teams are organized in squads that focus on a specific set of use cases or a specific product. We've seen the emerging of certain roles, so that a typical product operating model had a product manager, a scrum master, a solution architect, UI, UX, deployment, release manager, testers, et cetera. With AI, you started getting the prompt engineer, the data engineer, the data wranglers, et cetera. So these are squads that are orchestrated. Before, a few years ago, and maybe it's still in some organizations, these teams are sitting in separate departments where they report to their own general managers or VPs, et cetera. And what the factory model, what it helps bring is it overcomes that kind of bureaucracy where they're all working towards one objective, which is to deliver on the planned sprints that they have. It's no more, I need to satisfy that boss as opposed to satisfy the objectives that I'm working towards. And this is the kind of agility that AI factory models bring to the table, where every 2 weeks there is a new release and all the ceremonies around it are proving success of what is being delivered.
Yeah. How do you think about oversight, sort of governance in this space?
I can speak about it from a technical perspective, and the way we're seeing the evolution of developing code and developing solutions. The major problem that we have today that we're dealing with different kind of, software is an artisan business. It's handmade, right? So it's generated by humans. And if we compare it to the Industrial Revolution, or before the Industrial Revolution, the error margin in the production, it was not less than 10%. With the precision manufacturing that we have today, it's less than 0.1%. So I would like to see the software engineering converging into a similar model, because today, while being a handmade job as software engineering, it's going to converge with AI into a machine-made output, and it's going to impact quality big time. But we also need to find ways to control the code, because this is dangerous. And not only in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of quality, in terms of managing the legacy systems when they go online, they go production, and handle billions of transactions. So the human-in-the-loop model is not working anymore. AI can produce code in 1 week, a single AI agent that requires a team of 5 to review it in 1 month. So we're talking about big scale. You cannot just have a machine that's producing continuously, and then you put a human being who's going to review the output. So we have to design a new system that is human above the loop and not in the loop, so we can actually produce more and introduce new model of governance and control.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I hadn't thought of that. Let me ask you, Abdullah, I mean, when you're thinking about governance and oversight, how important of a consideration is it the actual regulatory regime that you're operating in per jurisdiction?
So let me take it from the IT house all the way outside to the wider ecosystem. Governance should always remain, and the objective of governance is keep everyone honest towards all the standards that are being set, the regulatory requirements that are being set. For example, we've seen in digital governments, every digital regulator comes with a set of standards of how IT organizations operate, from project management, to setting strategies, to enterprise architecture, to AI now, and overall AI architecture, reusability of national assets, et cetera, et cetera. So these all drive the decisions that are being made on investments. Are we investing in the right technology? Is it aligned with the regulation that is set for that specific area? And then it helps also manage the resources, because we have this top priority and that top priority topic. We have these limited resources. How do we organize it and how do we orchestrate it? That's within the house. And then with the business, it helps manage expectations and set expectations and bring the business to the table to be part of the solution. In many occasions, we've seen IT teams putting the effort, developing, solving problems, and then business coming and saying, but this is not our biggest issue. Our biggest issue is over there. So these governance, so the strategy with the governance will always make sure that the alignment, the constant alignment between the business and IT are in place to make sure that all the effort are delivering an objective that is impactful for the business. And then with the regulatory side, which is outside the organization, but aside the collaboration. So AI specifically, with all the technologies that are available in the market, I'm sure all of us in the room are faced with the confidentiality, the data residency issues that we have. There are all these exciting models and capable models that are available, but some of them are not yet available in the region, which makes it challenging, maybe impossible, that we leverage these technologies so that we can develop those exciting use cases. And we have seen that in many occasions. I mean, Wissam, with one of our recent experience together, I mean, it actually limited us until we're waiting for one of the hyperscalers to come to the region so that we can implement what we defined as the art of the possible of the use cases that we can implement using AI. So all of these, if the governance is not in place, organizations would have done a fantastic job, but they would have ended up being in non-compliance with significant data breach. So that's where the governance comes in perspective, and it's very, very important in that journey.
Yeah, another excellent point worth flagging. Maybe we can touch on, we sort of brushed by it earlier, but sort of how all of this is going to change CIOs' relationships with vendors, with partnerships. And the traditional model obviously is a fixed cost model, but should we be moving towards a different type of model under this new AI regime?
Definitely. I think the whole model of engagement will change. I can give you a couple of examples. So for example, fixed cost model used to be perceived by CIO as more of cost containment, less risk, and more control, basically. While today, this is shifting because the ones who are actually benefiting from the AI advancement will be the vendor. So the value or the benefit, the financial benefit, economic benefit will go to the vendor. If, for example, we were capable of expediting delivery by 50%, there is a fixed cost. So the organization will pay that cost no matter what. So the benefit will go to the vendor. And I would say today, it might be more reasonable to go into a time material approach to benefit or to capture some of the missed value of AI evolution. But the ultimate thing that we're also seeing in the market, and we had this discussion with Abdullah as well, it's the outcome-based approach. So it's not purely fixed cost, not purely time material, but it's a combination of three models: fixed cost, time material, and a bonus or something like that reflects the outcome that the vendor is being rewarded for based on the outcome that we achieve with the organization.
And do you actually see that happening right now?
That is actually, I mean, from the relationships in the region, it is actually a topic that is currently being explored. Outcome-based contracting is a thing, and it's definitely coming into surface very soon. We've seen many organizations applying that in a way of a risk-reward contracting. And we've seen that a lot over the past year. And especially when you talk about certain ambiguity that is being set when scoping. I'm sure many of us consultants here when we receive an RFP, yeah, this RFP is quite vague. It's hard to quantify that. It's hard to put the right estimate in a way that it caveats our scope properly, but doesn't end up disqualifying us from the bid with the number of assumptions that's there. But think about it from the CIO perspective, where I have an objective. I need someone to tell me how to achieve my objective, and I don't want to sign a contract and have a discussion about a change request after 2 or 3 months, which is a nightmare, especially in government context. That's a very long process, and there are a set of regulations that govern how government contracts are signed. And in that case, so to your point on how do we adopt a model with vendors where we can actually bring them on board in an early stages during the scoping of the engagement, so that they're aware about what is being discussed. Is there a strategy in place that helps towards it? Are we defining our use cases properly to help achieve an objective? That all facilitates the proper implementation of outcome-based. So it's, in my opinion, outcome-based contracting is the right way, but there are so many prerequisites towards successfully implementing it, to be fair with organizations and vendors. And that's all early engagements between organizations, clients, and the vendors in the market, and hold them accountable to developing the use case that is going to develop to have the right impactful outcomes when it gets implemented and when it gets rolled out.
Okay, so something to be mindful of. So which brings me perhaps towards the end of our discussion. I'm going to reframe it for you, Wissam. When you think about the return on investment on these AI strategies, what do you think is the most overlooked metric that people should be looking at to gauge the return on investment?
Yeah, I think mainly regarding metrics, if an AI project that is not linked directly to business objectives and the typical KPIs that we measure as a business, then it turns out to be a science project. So unless you're a research institute, there is no point of doing that. So as a KPI, I would say there is no change in terms of KPIs, but I would look into the causality. So I really want to know whether the improvement has been achieved because of AI or because of something else. Because teams today might be motivated because they are using new tools. They have a new leadership, a new process, a new change. So it's not necessarily just because of AI. So I'd focus more on causality analysis.
Okay.
I think when you want to measure the outcomes and the metrics, so it all starts again. I know I've said it 3-4 times already. What are we trying to solve? And are we trying to cut costs? Are we improving the quality of the user experience that we're offering? Are we making the process shorter? Because all of that can be quantifiable. What is our starting point? If I develop this use case, these are the outcomes that we are going to be getting within this period of time, within 6 months, 1 year, etc. And accordingly, here is the savings, here is the impact on my satisfaction score, etc. This is all quantifiable. And before we start actually developing, and by we I mean the business, the IT teams, the technology, the digital transformation team, they have to sign on these outcomes before they actually start developing. And there is a practice that is done, which is basically building a POC before this use case is scaled up to be in production, which is to test, is this actually going to work? Is it delivering the right impact? Is the technology working? Which requires a small investment before you actually scale it up to be a product or incubate it within one of the current digital products within the organization. And from the early stages, every concerned stakeholder signed on these outcomes. Then you measure the progress that is being made against these outcomes from the business case that was signed at the beginning. And I think this is the only way of making sure that you're investing in the right area.
Okay, I've got 1 minute. I'm going to ask both of you very quickly, because we've got a bunch of interested, hopefully CIOs and rest. When they leave this room, what is one actionable piece of advice that you would give the first thing that they can consider? We've spoken about a lot of, medium, longer term plans and modifications that they can make to the strategy, but just one actionable takeaway.
Well, our job as CIO today is more like a Wall Street investor. It's not about today's value, it's about the perceived value of the future. So they have to think about the challenges and not only about whether they have to adopt a specific tool or not, but they have to think about the, let's say, the obsolescence of the tools. Because whatever you buy today might not be living tomorrow. So it's more of making the right bets, focusing on the challenges.
If I'm to leave you with one thought, that's going to be us running our organizations. We're aware of the challenges that we have. We're aware of the shortcomings that we have within the data, within the platforms that we have. And this drives the commitments that are being made, the pressures that come from the top on the need to accelerate the achievements and accomplishments. Seeking perfection is always a rabbit hole that is hard to get out of. And my advice to clients is deliver in piecemeal, deliver success slowly, but set yourself in the right direction. And instead of aiming for a big bang success that's going to be very hard to accomplish, start showing success in small pieces, shorter period of time to get the buy-in, to get the support that you need to achieve the bigger success moving forward.
Love it. That's a great place to leave it. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you.